I'm Christina Bossinakis.
And I'm Gabby Gaudet, and you're listening to the TDN's Let's Talk. Welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast. We're up to episode 3, and today we'll be speaking about mental health.
And we have 3 jockeys joining us, 2 Hall of Famers, John Velazquez and Ramon Dominguez, as well as Richie Migliore, a Fox NYRA commentator.
Let's get into it. I hope you enjoy.
Speaking about horse racing currently, obviously it's gone through a lot of changes over the years, over the past few decades. And one of the biggest changes really that we've seen over the last probably two decades has been technology. And in many ways, it's been a wonderful thing. It's been great for horse racing in so many ways. And one of them is actually social media. Social media has been great in some ways, and in other ways, it's had its challenges. And I think that's where we want to kick off here is social media, the pressures in terms of your profession, basically going out and doing what you have to do every day, but then also having to deal with social media. And I'm going to start with Richie here first, because I know that you were on social media. You're very active on social media. You let us into your life. We get to see all the wonderful food you're eating and all the wonderful exploits. Yeah, exactly. But there is another side to it, Richie, and I know that you left it for a while. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think social media is a great tool to reach people and let them know who you are and kind of let them into your world and use it to promote things. Obviously, we were asked to get on Twitter in particular to promote doing shows on Fox, and it's a great medium, but I don't like when people become so negative. The one thing that I try to portray, and it's my attitude, is just being very positive and educational. I think one thing we all have to really keep in mind is so many people don't really understand our industry, horse racing, that well. And using social media to kind of reach people, to see that we're real people, that, just like them, but we are in a different, industry and something that we can use to help educate. And I just got sour with it by the beginning of the summer, people being negative and jumping on any little thing to espouse these, horrible notions about racing or, just negativity in general. So I took a break. I'm back on it now. I'm not as active, but I'm definitely, still trying to share what I think is pertinent in my life.
And you're absolutely right. Even when I retired, still social media, at least for me, was something that I was not deeply involved with. Since then, I have been doing it, and it's something that probably has gotten a little out of hand at points. And I can see definitely, as you mentioned, Christina, how social media in general has its pros and cons. So certainly, when I look at the positives, is that it gives the average person an opportunity to voice their opinion. But that itself also presents an issue because sometimes there are people that by now we all recognize that it's not an issue when you're voicing an opinion that really is not educated and you're wrong. Let's just say that you're wrong. It is okay. I mean, a lot of us, even if we're talking about anything within racing, I will tell you something that I believe that's the way it is. And as it turns out, I may be wrong because nobody knows at all. However, the issue is that there are people who have an agenda to just be negative. And when we talk right now strictly about horse racing, there are those who are just looking for something to really talk negativity about the sport. And by no means that horse racing is perfect. However, if we just talk about the issues, even our perception is going to be that it's an awful sport. But the reality is quite the opposite, where in the last decade, the advances and all the different things that have taken place to make the sport better when it comes to even aftercare, when it comes to safety, is definitely much better, and we're moving into the right direction. So I feel like sometimes there are people who are very smart, and just as they can determine that there is an issue and over talking about it doesn't solve the problem. Why don't you utilize that energy into trying to come up with a solution, or maybe join forces with somebody if it is really that important to you? Try to just be on the positive side and join forces and have a collective effort to make a positive change. So Those are my views in social media, but certainly these days, I feel like we live a dual life, the social media life and the real life. So there has to be a delicate balance, because sometimes social media can certainly run our lives, and it's not positive.
I just want to shift gears a little bit. And, if you speak to a jockey that has had any bit of a career in this industry, I would say 99.9% of them have had an injury, whether it be a severe injury or whether it be, an injury that they can come back from, or even just a fall. Richie, I wanted to start with you with this, because we've talked about this before. Can you kind of take us back to that moment where you had to retire, and kind of what that incident was like?
Well, it's kind of an ironic thing, because I had broken my neck in an accident way back in 1988. Had surgery. They fused several of my vertebrae in my neck. And the accident that actually ended my career in 2010, the doctor that had to do another surgery and put plates and screws in my neck said that if I hadn't broken my neck back in 88, the severity of the injuries I had this time, I most likely would have been a quadriplegic. He said, because the scar tissue and all the sinew that had built up around the original injury actually held things together. And I actually went back to riding. I was in a lot of pain, but thinking I had a pinched nerve, I could work my way through it. I rode a filly that Johnny's familiar with, Life at 10, and just won a stake on her. And I wanted to go ride her in Chicago. When I finally got to Mount Sinai Hospital, my wife Carmela had made a bunch of phone calls, got me in to see a specialist. He took all these images and he said, I see what's wrong with you. And I said, I got a pinched nerve, right? And he says, no, you've got 6 broken vertebrae in your neck and 2 in your back. And he goes, I don't know how you walked in here. So I asked him if I could go ride Life at 10 in the 60 sales in Chicago and then come back to the hospital. And he said, no, that's not going to happen. You're going to check in today. And they did the surgery and my career was over. Unlike Ramon, who I was in the midst of his prime, I was in the back nine. I was in the twilight of my career. I physically, I wasn't what I once was. Mentally, I could see a race well. I could, still had a great feel and judge of horses, but I certainly wasn't what I once was when I would call my prime. So even though it was admittedly towards the end, I was 44 when the accident happened. It still sent me into a deep, dark place. I went into a deep depression. Not originally, when I first got out of the hospital and was home, I didn't feel good and I didn't care. At that moment, I didn't care, about horse racing. I didn't care about riding. 3 or 4 months later, when I started feeling better and the reality was you're never going to do that again, I really got depressed and I struggled for well over a year. I was in as dark a place as I've ever been in my life. And I had to kind of reassess my approach to it. I was fortunate that I got great opportunities to start doing television and be involved in the game. But I couldn't look at it like I'd never do that again. I had to look at it like I'm not going to do that today, almost like a person struggling with addiction. If I looked at it like I'm never going to ride a horse again, I'm never going to break out of the gate again, it would overwhelm me and I would get very, very down. But if I just wake up in the morning and go, I'm not going to do that today, I could deal with it. It was what was right in front of me. And again, admittedly, as hard as it was for me, I'm sure with Ramon, it was even harder because Ramon was at the height of his powers. I mean, he was doing so many things that were just amazing that, I've never seen a rider be able to have a horse in a spot and steady him along without ever breaking the momentum. And then they would find more when the opportunity presented itself. And to that end too, Johnny, I was already a veteran. I was a senior rider when Johnny came around. And what the accidents and injuries Johnny's gone through and come back and ridden with the same enthusiasm, the same intensity, never any fear or doubt. And Johnny's always been, since the time he was a kid when he came to New York, always somebody that was always looking out for the other riders. And I've always been astonished. I don't know how he balances his workload professionally and then how much he does for his fellow riders. I just don't see how there's enough hours in the day.
Yeah, thank you, Richie. But I mean, I have to say that I've been one of the lucky ones. The three of us here, that all my injuries that I've had in the past, is not bad enough that stopped me for coming back from riding. Though though I have breaking every bone in my body like you both, it's never been as dangerous like you guys though. So I've been one of the blessed ones. There. Being able to come back and do what I love for a living. So
You're being too humble. That accident at the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita, and we know this. You almost lost your life and had to remove.
Well, yeah, I was one, but so I still, I came out of the hospital. That's my point, though. And it was not serious enough. I could have died there. Actually, to save my life, and thank God for that. But once I come out and I feel like, I was good, and the doctors told me that I was going to have a full recovery. It was accepted to me if I was acceptable to come back to ride. And I was just like, so I never doubted that I was not coming back though, so, but yeah, I almost lost my life, but, I came out of there and never thought that, shit, I'm going to retire. But, I was just like, no, the doctor told me I can do this. My wife said to me, so what are you going to do? So the doctor told me that, as I said to me, I'm going to give myself 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is that it takes me, to get ready and get back at it. It's like, it's okay. She says, so I just want to know, because we have to make plans. What are we going to do? And I told him, well, if I feel good and I get my opportunities, I'm going right back at it. So that was it. And thank God. She supported it. She didn't, say no, that, that's it for her. Obviously the kids and her, it's their life too, because they know that, there was, 2 times, that one's the most serious one that they almost lost me. But she was supportive of it, and just said that was my decision, that I was going to go back, and she said, okay, let's go and do it again.
I've got to just interrupt a second. I'm laughing because Carmela, when I decided I was going to try to find a doctor to give me the opinion I wanted, I went through several. I couldn't get an okay to ride. A friend of mine, a fellow rider, I'm not going to call him out here, had a friend in Tijuana, a doctor, and he said, if you give him 10,000, he'll give you an okay. So I told Carmela, I'm going to fly to Tijuana and get it okay. I'm going to pay this guy 10,000. She said, that's fine. I support whatever you want to do. But while you're there, find an attorney also. So she had about enough.
Very nice.
Line in the sand.
I have to say, we should, our next podcast should be with the wives of jockeys.
Yeah.
Because I feel like just thinking about all of your, have to be rock stars. Just the ups and downs, and just a lot of the traumatic nature of just a lot of what you guys go through. They go through it too. They're your wives. So they really go through the struggles. But, Richie mentioned it, Johnny has also touched on it. Ramon, you were at the height of your powers when you were injured and you had to retire. That is obviously different than what Richie experienced a little bit, in any case, different than what Johnny's experiencing. Tell us about emotionally, how do you go from you were at the top of your game and then all of a sudden somebody tells you, or you decide that I can't do this anymore?
Yeah, it was a process, and part of the process, I say that there is a grieving period because, in my case, number one, initially, all along, I thought that I was going to come back to ride, and I even gave an interview saying, "Yeah, I think that I'll be back in." I don't know if I say a month or 2. Honestly, I wasn't in my right mind at the moment. I was still going through recovery, but the time came when the doctor basically set me down, and they explained to me all of the injuries that I have had before, the brain injuries, and what it meant for me to go back and be exposed to hitting my head again. They say, we cannot clear you. You should not ride again. So I did do what Migliore did. I know what he wanted to do to pay $10,000, but I did go to see a couple other doctors and get another opinions, and everybody was pretty consistent saying, oh, you're lucky. And they were blown away as to how I was doing cognitively, how well I was doing. But so they came when I announced my retirement, and it's something that, of course, it felt sort of it didn't feel real because, but making the announcement wasn't really the most difficult thing. It's what led or what happened afterwards, the days that came after that, because I got to a point where I said, wow, this is real. I will not be riding a race again. So that is difficult because it's not only something that we absolutely love. It's one thing when you had to stop doing something. Let's just say that you have a job that is really paying the bills, but you're not really passionate about it. I always said that I would have paid to ride horses for a long time. So therefore, it was my passion. So even if you are aware that that is what you do for a living, and even if you're proud of your accomplishments and what you do, it's not really doesn't define who you are. There is still this intertwinedness between who you are and what you do, that you feel like I was, or at least I felt like I was losing part of me, or I was losing who I was. And that is so wrong. So through this period and just reflecting back, I get to realize that, listen, I am proud of what I did or about what I accomplished, because I put a lot of hard work and it was a beautiful time. But it's time to turn the page. And I was able to turn the page where I can sincerely say that I was okay with leaving that in the past. It didn't happen overnight, and I couldn't say enough about how important it was to have a spouse like I do. My wife was incredible. Right after my retirement, we came to Saratoga, and I did not want to go to the track. She said, let's go to the track. I said, heck no, I'm not going to the track, because it was really painful for me to go and watch the races. It was still too early. And one day she said, no, it's not if you want to go, we're going. And so we went, and I was glad that I did it because I had a great time. And then after that, we went again another day. And from then on, it was actually pleasant, and I enjoy going to the track. So, but it certainly was a process. And now, speaking with some of my fellow riders, my peers that retire even on their own, I realized most of them face the same thing, where it's, there is this feeling of the kind of you're losing a little bit of your persona or your identity.
Well, that's interesting you say that, Ramon, because that was the biggest thing. And I'm almost embarrassed to say it now, but I felt like I lost my identity. You start dreaming to do something when you're 10, working at it. By the time I was 12, by the time I was 15, I was riding professionally. And then 44, it's over. And I really felt like I lost my identity. Now, with, it's almost 12 years since I rode. My identity is being a father, being a husband, being a friend, being a brother, maybe being a mentor to younger riders. So, but in that moment, that's how you feel, because it's all you've ever done, and your routine. I loved going to the Jockeys room. I couldn't wait to get to the Jockeys room in the morning, and the camaraderie in there, and maybe taking somebody's money at cards.
yeah, you did very good on that, Richie.
But what is it, and this is for any one of you that wants to answer this, what is it in the jockey's psyche that you can be in one of the most frightening spills? I mean, something that's just harrowing to look at, and then you can just get up in the next moment. Because I remember Angel Cordero told me a story once, and I think he was talking about, I think it was Jose Santos that he was talking about, that he broke his leg, and his leg was broken, and he was stuffing, things into his boot to make sure to stabilize it so he can go and ride a race. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a different kind of psychology, right? That I don't understand, because I'm not that way.
Yeah, we are crazy.
But
we are crazy people.
You have to be
we all done that.
To be a jockey, right?
Yeah, we all done that. I mean, just crazy things that we come up with, and I don't know, black paint or something, and we come up with the stupid things that I can work through it, and we all do it for whatever reason. I can't explain it why, but
are you trying
I guess
to prove it to yourself or prove yourself to other people, though?
No, because it's not to prove to anybody. I think for me, in my case, it's like, no, I think it's the fear of losing your business, or losing the horse that you love, or losing that moment that you can. It could be a really good horse, it's a stake or something like that. The fear of losing that moment, the opportunity that you have right now, though. And I think that alone makes you think differently, though. I can work through the pain. I can do this, though. I mean, obviously. Afterwards, when you completely sound and not feeling any pain, you said, man, I was so freaking stupid. But you know what? You do it again. I mean, I did it again and again and again. And, and it's stupid, but, the fear of losing that opportunity of that horse that you love and that you want to be part of it, it make you do things that are very stupid.
Definitely what Johnny's saying, the business aspect has a lot to do. We are creatures of habits, and it's not something that you're trained to, you need to be tough. I mean, some of us may have that kind of upbringing, pretty tough, that you need to be strong. But I think that is something that you just become that person where you know that basically there is no other option. If there is the slim chance that you can ride, you'll do it. And there is really never a good opportunity to choose to say, I'm going to take off my mounts, because if you are, whether starting or you are just struggling to get going, and you say, man, if I stop now because I have a hairline fracture or a fracture or something that this pain because I went down, this horse that I'm riding or this other horse, I'm not going to be able to ride him. And that's going to basically make me enough money to pay my bills. But if you are in a position like Johnny, where you're riding these amazing horses and winning these big races, same thing. If I don't ride this weekend, or if I don't ride for 2 weeks, somebody else is going to ride my horses. So now we all can definitely talk about times when we have riding when we shouldn't have. And I mean, I had in 2 occasions I rode with a fracture, and it's something that I don't know that, like Gabby was saying, whether it is a huge trying to show to people. No, it's really a personal thing that I know that I can do it, even if I cannot, if I don't hit with this hand, I'm going to be able to hit with this hand. And it's sort of a challenge to yourself, but there is no a whole lot of thought put behind it. That's the only option. And it's something that when you stop, and whether, like Johnny said, after all is said and done, and after a few weeks or month, or when you are in a different environment and you reflect on that, you say, that's just pure insanity.
But you know that it's important, and I want young riders to understand this. And I talk to them and I say this: for every jockey, for every athlete, there's a last ride, there's a last at bat, there's a last play. And if you're fortunate, you get to choose when that last ride is. You know, a few notable guys, Chris McCarron, Jerry Bailey, Pat Day, they accomplished amazing things, and they made a decision it was time to step away. Vast majority of riders don't get that opportunity. So I tell young riders, there will be a last ride, and hopefully you get to choose when. But that's why you owe it to yourself to make the most out of the time you have, to be the best you possibly can be. Because once it's over, you can't go, well, I wish I'd have worked harder. You don't have a do-over. And you've already got a job that an ambulance follows you around. You owe it to yourself to be the very best you can be.
Absolutely.
Richie, I want to ask you something now. And again, we can ask everybody this particular question. You mentioned the ambulance following you around. Again, that's a different thing that most of us don't experience day to day, certainly. Do you feel fear? Did you feel fear at times? Was there a moment where you thought to yourself, that feeling came into you?
I think anybody who doesn't admit that there are times when you have fear, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being able to do what you need to do despite the fear. And not that you live with a constant fear, but sure, you get in a spot or you see somebody go in a spot in front of you and you're, this isn't going to be good. Yeah, of course, in that moment, you're like, but it's not the thing that's forefront in your mind. For me, life's risk and reward. The reward and the pleasure and the love of what I was, privileged to do. That, I was a kid who grew up in an apartment building in Brooklyn, New York, watching the races every Saturday on Channel 9, Charles C. Canny, Frank Wright. Then the fact that I was a part of this world, that it took me out of the city, to the point now I have a farm. I'm talking to you, looking out on my fields. The reward so far outweighed the risk. And I'm also a believer in fate. I just generally believe there's a huge book, like a ledger, and you can't run from your destiny. Whatever's meant to be is going to be. All I can do is control the person I am, be the best I can be at what I'm trying to do, and be the best person I can be. So no, I don't think any rider could ride with the idea of walking out to the race course or out to the paddock with fear. But anybody who doesn't admit there's a moment at times when somebody clips heels in front of you, or you got a horse running off with you, or running out on heels.
Absolutely.
That moment, of course, you're going to have that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's fear all the time, but that somebody falling, a horse break down, unfortunately, and you're behind somebody like that, or even your own horse. So it's always there, but you don't have that fear going into the race, though. You plan what you're going to do in the race, anticipating what's going to happen. Hopefully your horse will respond for the things you would like to do. And once the gate's open, believe me, all you're thinking is about strategy. Oh, what's needed of you? Where are you going to go? And the fear will come into that moment that something happens in the race. Other than that, I mean, for me anyway, if you have fear going into the race, you should not be riding, because you make more mistakes. You do every mistake is possible in there, because you don't go into a spot where you're supposed to go, or you go out when you're not supposed to go out. So it makes it very difficult for a person that does have to be here. And I'm saying, I there's some of them up there that I think they should not be riding, though. And it's a problem for everybody, though. For me, Richie, obviously, Ramon, I can talk for a second. When I saw them ride them, there was no fear there. They were going to go to the places they need to be. They were doing the right things. Those are the people you watch, and then you learn from the people who those is tender or had the fear to go to those places, because those are the things that you don't want to do, so you always try to watch everybody and learn from everybody. And yes, I mean, for me, and I talk for these two guys as well, because I saw them riding. The fear was not there when there were other races. When they're at the race, they're focusing what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, let me tell you, when you talk about fear, obviously we are explaining about the actual fear or the concern or the worries while riding a race, and God forbid there is an accident, and certainly both Johnny and Richard explained that very well. Now, but there are other fears that has to do with the life of a jockey, because it is such a demanding career. It's such a demanding profession, because fear in itself, when it comes to the unknown, when you're a jockey and I'm doing well, but every day presents with a different set of challenges. You don't know really what is going to happen. And it's different perhaps for the jockey, or it's magnified, I should say, compared to other athletes, or most athletes, just because the athletes prepare and train for a specific game or perhaps for a season. Jockeys have a never-ending season. It's year-round racing. So, and even if you have great business and you're doing well and you had an amazing day today, tomorrow you have to turn the page. It's a brand new day, and things can start going back when you fall into a slump and things change. So that is always in the back of your mind, the concern. But I want to go back briefly to talk about the other fear that they were speaking about, and something that I learned through my career. This is going to be a little bit rough to explain, just because of the nature of what was going through my mind, but it was a great lesson that I learned. So I remember clear where I was driving my Honda to Aqueduct, where since the night before, when I look at the paper and saw what I was riding, there was a horse that I was riding that I had ridden before that I didn't want to ride. I was very concerned about this horse because he didn't feel well. And so I'm thinking about this horse, and all I could think is about this horse. And somebody had lent me some CD about Tony Robbins, and I happened to be listening to this, and he talked about the acronym of fear, and he says fear stands for false evidence appearing real. So when I hear that, I say, wow, that sounds pretty cool. So up until that point, I was told by other people that, that just try to forget about it, try to forget about it, but that never works. I tried to forget about this horse that I was riding, that I was very concerned or I was afraid of. And, but it was sort of in the back of my mind, reminding me, hey, I'm here, you still have to ride me. So when I listened to this guy talking about false evidence appearing real, I chose to look into this like in the face and say, okay, what is really the big issue here? So I go out there and I'm going to have an opportunity to warm up this horse. If this horse doesn't feel sound enough, I have the other choice to tell the veterinarian to, listen, I don't want to ride the horse, let's crash him. But let's say that the horse warms up well, and I put him in the gate, and then in the race, he doesn't feel well. Well, I had the opportunity to just pull him up, and then I'll tell the stewards that the horse didn't feel well. But let's just say that the horse actually feels okay, but he happens to get hurt. Well, the fact that he gets hurt doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a bad injury, so he doesn't have to fall. But let's say that the horse ends up really getting hurt where he falls. Well, if I fall, doesn't necessarily mean that I have to get hurt. So by then, I had to take it to a place where there was so many ifs that I realized that it was pretty unlikely to happen. And I honestly went into the jobs room feeling so much better. And I don't remember what the horse did, but the horse was fine. So, but it was really a big lesson for me, and something that I kind of went back to this place of trying to have this approach with other cases that were similar. Instead of really trying to forget about it, was just kind of looking at this fear in the eyes.
That's incredible. I mean, it's so, nobody knows that. Nobody knows how cerebral, honestly, Ramon, you are, and Johnny and Richie. I mean, there's just so much thought that goes into it. But when you were talking about fear, and I kind of want to stay on that topic, when you come back from these injuries, and especially now, I feel like, or even then, you're under so much scrutiny, whether it be from the jockey, whether it be from the trainer or public opinion or broadcasters, whatever it may be, or even nowadays with social media. How do you work through that pressure? And even when you're coming back off of injury, number one, but especially if you're going through a slump, I mean, how do you get out of your head?
It's a tough question, but like for me, I'll go back to my first major injury. And I spent 6 weeks in the hospital, and Pete Ferriola was the leading trainer in New York at the time. And he came to the hospital and said, when you're ready, and I was still in a halo. And he said, when you're ready to ride, I will put you on your first winner. So you need the support of people that believe in you, and trainers and owners that'll give you the opportunity. And he gave me the first horse, and the only thing he said to me in the paddock was, just don't fall off. And the horse won by 6 or 7 lengths. So immediately when you win, it kind of puts it behind you, and it removes doubt from other people's mind. And I was always fortunate of the many injuries that I incurred during my career, whether it was Kieran McLaughlin, whether it was Michael Hushin, whether it was John Kimmel. I always had someone I can go to and say, listen, I need to come back winning. And they would put me on an ultra live horse to get off the mark winning. And that washes away a lot of your own doubts, and then the scrutiny that people are putting you under.
For me, I never put that pressure on me or coming back, but you also like to come back winning. And I was very fortunate. I mean, I got hurt when I was a bug, and I had Carlos, your good friend, Carlos Figueroa, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Figueroa. So, it was working for Howie Thatcher, and I have John DeStefano, and I have all the guys that at the beginning of my career got hurt. It's like, don't worry, when you come back, it's like, we get you, we get you rolling, we get you. Carlos got me out of my house 3 weeks, not even 3 weeks after I broke my collarbone. He says, you got to come out. It's like, Carlos, I haven't done anything in 3 weeks. This horse, all you have to do is hold on, don't fall off, you're going to win anyway. It's like, Carlos, I cannot do this. I haven't done anything for 3 weeks. Johnny, I'm telling you, you got to get in this horse. He's going to take you around, and you're just going to win. So those are the things that you think. So you have somebody telling you, no, just come out and just hold on to this horse that you're going to win. So those things you think about it, that you have people supporting you, that believe on you, and things happens like that. But every incident that I had, or every accident that I had after that, I never had that pressure, because you know what? I wanted to prove it to myself that I could do the job that I was doing before. So I never thought about the scrutiny or anybody else what was thinking about me. I was thinking about myself. I always thought it's like, man, it's like, if I want to do this, I got to prove it to myself. So that was my mentality, and that's been my mentality from day one. Though, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it well. Or the fear for me is not doing it well, the best I can do. I want to make sure that I can do for me, not for anybody else. And that's been my fear, that I will go back and I cannot do it the way I wanted to do it. Though. Not because anybody is telling me, thinking, how can I do it? It's about me mentally, that I can do the job the way I wanted to do it. And I think that's what has worked for me all these years.
I feel like in my case, the first time that I got hurt, I mean, being very young, and I feel like it was like, wow, this can happen to me too. Because up until that point, I don't know, I feel like I was Superman. Like that's not going to happen to me. And then anytime that I broke a bone and I came back, there was always a little bit of concern or a little bit of fear the first few months, and something that I wasn't even thinking about it. It was just sort of in the back of your mind, but you go back to, you have done it so many times that after no time, that's over, and you kind of go back into your routine. My biggest concern, just like Richie, it was to come back and start winning quick, because although I tried not to be too worried about what people were thinking, I couldn't help it because my business depended on me doing well and what people thought of me as a jockey. So I remember one of my last injuries, one of the reporters in NYRA came to the jocks room after I rode a race, and I just shortly, I had just been riding a few days, and he said, "Hey, Ramon, I'm going to write an article. Do you know that you're off for 17 after you came back? What's happening? Are you afraid?" I'm like thinking, oh my God, you kidding me? So that's something that it was concerning to me, to come back and be in a slump, because I didn't want people to think, oh, he's not the same. But yes, it's just the nature of the business.
Such a great conversation with the jockeys that we're having so far, Christina, but we want to take a quick pause for a word from our sponsors. And First Racing, it's a company that you and I have had plenty of experience with. We're so happy that they're on board.
Thrilled. And I think it's so appropriate. I had said to you earlier that I thought it was appropriate that First Racing is the first one on board, because obviously I had experience. I was working at Gulfstream Park for a few seasons as their on-air host and one of their commentators. You also worked at Gulfstream. You also worked at Laurel. So you one-upped me there. But again, we have a lot of, not only a relationship with First Racing, but many of the people, the great people that work there. So we've really been fortunate.
And it's a very big month for First Racing as well. Obviously at Gulfstream Park, the Pegasus World Cup is coming up, and obviously a really, really important way to kick off the year, not only for First Racing, but also for the industry as a whole.
You know, Gabby, I was really lucky to be there for the first year, actually for the first few years, and they kicked it off in style, really. Had a horse like Arrogate to come there and to win. He was so impressive. You know, what a beautiful horse, unfortunately ill-fated, but he just was really, as they say in the business, ticked all the boxes and tremendous. Then they had Gunrunner. Like, you couldn't outdo Arrogate. You had to have a horse like Gunrunner and City of Light. They've just really had good horses, and they've always just evolved. They've taken another step in the last few years. They added a turf race. Now they're adding a filly and mare race on the turf. So really, they've been really trying to stay ahead of the curve and just broaden their package.
And it's incredible how this race really came about, Christina. It's essentially to keep some of those really good older handicap horses in training. And that's what we see from several of the horses that are invited this year, where we could potentially get the chance to see Nix go before he goes off to his next career as a stallion at TaylorMade.
You make a really great point. Many of these horses traditionally would just retire after the Breeders' Cup, if that's what it was in the program for them to enter stud the next season. But now, because it's just right around the corner, it's in the end of January, they keep them in training. Sometimes they'll give them a month off, maybe a freshener in between, but they'll bring them back either for a next campaign or they'll retire them. So again, following suit, like we said, we've had great horses coming into this race. We still have to get the good horses before they go off to stud or before they go off into other areas of the world to run in these big races. But it really is a great series, and they've really tried to do something different, and I think they have.
And I hate to refer to as the Pegasus as an appetizer, but it kind of is for the winter down at Gulfstream, because obviously that does kick off the Triple Crown campaign, the Derby prep races you get down there, and also the Oaks prep races. So although it's fireworks in January, there's a lot more to come for the winter at Gulfstream.
Well, we've seen a lot of these horses, actually, they start off at Gulfstream in the winter. Many of the 3-year-olds, they kick off, they debut or they run early in the season before they move on to go on to the other Triple Crown races. So yes, it is very meaningful, but in all divisions, whether it's for the fillies, classics, or for the colts, or going on into other division, whether it's going to be the main turf horses of the season or any category, really, you get a very, very good foundation here at Gulfstream, and it really is what the marquee event for the racetrack.
Well, we're looking forward to the winter at Gulfstream, but obviously Santa Anita, Laurel, Golden Gate, First Racing does so much for the sport, and they do so much for us as well. Thank you so much to First Racing to be our sponsor on Let's Talk. We're going to pause for a second for a quick word from First.
Pegasus, the divine winged horse that flew with heroes mounted for glory. Arrogate, Gunrunner, City of Light, Mucho Gusto, and Nix Go. Racing, the thunder and lightning on the track, energy in the stands. 5, fashion, entertainment, all for one.
Thank you very much to our sponsor, First Racing. Very pleased to have them on board. And now we turn back to our conversation with the jockeys. And I asked Richie Migliore, what is the relationship between riders in the jocks room? Is it really a team sport? And how important is that relation in terms of health and safety on the track?
I think it's important. I think, older riders understand that they make it safer out there if they're helping younger guys learn the things they should do and shouldn't do, the places they should be and shouldn't be. So it's not only their responsibility, it just makes it better for them as well. And honestly, you get to this level of Ramon, Johnny, riders that, of this ilk.
And yourself.
Well, but you know what I'm saying, that you have enough confidence in your own abilities that you're not worried about helping someone else to improve. So you're very confident in what you can do. And it's not just the jockeys room community. And listen, it's like a dysfunctional family at times. There's guys you get on with that you really genuinely like, and there's guys that you just don't really care for. They don't care for you. For some reason, you're oil and water, and you've got to go back to the same locker room. But there's an old adage, if you let two old dogs chew on each other for a little while, they'll figure out a way to just stay apart. If you constantly are pulling them apart, they're always going to want to get at each other. So in the jockeys room, you got guys that you're just not going to get on with, and you figure out a way to kind of just steer clear of each other and not get in each other's way as much as possible. But the whole community, Johnny brought up something, Carlos Figueroa. I met Carlos and David Figueroa when I'm 11 years old, started a pony ride business with them. Every Saturday we're watching, the racing show, and we're arguing about who's going to win. And I was a big Braulio Baeza fan, and Carlos was a big Angel Cordero fan, and who was the best. And then we all made it in the industry. And then like Johnny to have that connection. It's such a close-knit community in so many ways because you have connections to people, whether you know them directly or through somebody else. So I just found it interesting when Johnny brought up Carlos.
No, but it's funny because you always had support and you always have the doubters, though, so I always focus on the people who want to give me the opportunity and forget about those people who doubted it. I mean, from the get-go, I mean, I can tell you, Mochera told Angel after a week being, actually 2 weeks riding in New York, he told me, and I didn't speak the language, so I didn't know, what the heck he was telling him. And my friend Peter was on the pony, taking me on the pony, and Mochera's yelling at Angel's like, "You bug boy sucks. He's never gonna make it here in New York." Also, and I don't know what the heck he was saying. So I asked my friend Peter, so Peter, what is it? You don't want to know. Come on. What is he saying about me? It's like, he told you that you suck and you're never going to make it here in New York. So those things that I can stay away from it. And then I stay, with people who are really supporting you, giving you the good vibes and all that. And so Carlos was one of those from the get-go when I was a bug boy that, was working for Howie Thatcher and help me out too, because I didn't speak any the language. So help me with Thatcher and tell me to, you got to write this, you got to write that one, at least this one you can win. So you concentrate the people who are really trying to help you and be positive. So it's a balance that you have to take all your career, no matter what. And I'm sure in any job, in any industry, it's like that. There are people who are going to be negative about you, and other ones are going to be, very positive and very supportive.
Yeah, two things. There is the camaraderie of this family, like in the jockeys room, which is really crazy when you think about that. Each of us is our own team, but at the same time, we're in the same locker room. So we're out there in trying to do our job, trying to protect our ground, but at the same time, there is this line and these unwritten rules that you don't want to break, when it comes to safety. And I think that, for example, in New York, they do a very good job. Once in a while, there is a guy who thinks that he's smarter than the rest and he wants to cross this line. And it's something that you don't even talk about, but he's gonna learn a lesson, and they're gonna do it with class, but he's gonna learn that doesn't fly in New York, let's just say. Now, when it comes to the support or the perception of how people see you outside the jockeys room, but within the sport, is something that at least I learned the importance of really being detached to the opinion of others. Although the opinion is important and you want the opinion to be good because you're doing very well, at the same time, you cannot let your emotions be dictated by how other people feel about you. And I'll give you an example. So, good friend of mine who was great supporter, Richard Englander, and I will never forget this. He had me riding a really good horse that he had that I actually even went to ride in Dubai by the name of my cousin Matt. And the only time in my whole career that I rode a match race, it was in Delaware Park. It rained a lot that day, and the race crashed down to two horses, my cousin Matt and another horse. So my cousin Matt, typically in a normal race, he will be like mid-pack or stalking, third, fourth. And in this race, the strategy completely changed. I said, there's only one other horse. We're going to go at it. So sure enough, I warmed him up well, and we went at it head to head. I happened to get lucky, and I won the race by a nose. So I said, great. So you won't believe he called my agent and said, what the heck is Ramon doing? That was awful. He's not riding the same and blah, blah, blah. I'm like thinking, are you kidding me? And so if I would have let his perception of me influence how I felt, it would have been a roller coaster of emotions. I was very aware of when I was doing things bad. And believe me, every day I'll go home just kind of pretty hard on myself when I made a mistake. And I would be good listening to other people when there was a criticism, even if it was negative criticism, that I knew that it was grounded and it was well-formed. But when I have people who will elevate me and then take me down just as fast because of how things were going for them, I certainly thought that it was important to detach myself from those opinions.
Absolutely.
You know what they say about opinions. I'll leave it at that. But I learned that lesson very, very young. I was 14 years old. I lived in Barn 46 at Belmont. Loretta Lustig, John Kimmel's assistant, it's her office now. That was my room at the track. And we ran a horse in the last race, and I idolized Steve Cawthon. I wanted to be like Steve Cawthon. He had been an apprentice 4 years before me. And I see Lenny Goodman, who had been his agent, coming down the escalator in the lobby of Belmont. He had his entourage around him. And, I'm a kid from Brooklyn. I walked up to him, probably a little too cocky. And I said, Mr. Goodman, my name's Richie Migliore. I'm going to be just as good as Steve Cawthon, and I want you to be my agent. And I stuck out my hand. I shook his hand. And I remember he had this big pinky ring, and he kind of held my hand and looked at the guys around him. He said, kid, as big as your hands and feet are, he goes, I got a friend who owns a construction company. I'll get you a job as a bricklayer. I cried all the way back to my room. I'm laying on my cot that night crying. I'm going to call my oldest brother, come take me home. The best agent in the world just told me I'm going to be a bricklayer. Well, that was September of 1980. August of 1981, I broke Steve Cawthon's money record. And Joe Shea, who had been Ron Turcotte's agent, was my agent. But they went right to Lenny Goodman, who had Jeffrey Fell's book at the time. Hey, what about this kid? Oh, I always knew he was going to be good. And I said it right there in the window. Said, no, he did not. He told me I was going to work in construction. So you got to be strong enough to believe in yourself and keep going forward.
But I think with your experience now, all of your experience, you obviously have many miles under you as a jockey. How important is it to also to pass it on? I know you touched on it, Johnny. All of you actually touched on this in terms of the younger riders coming up today, because we do see it at times. We see some younger riders, they don't have the benefit of the experience that you guys have had in terms of good or bad. So sometimes they may do some questionable things. Do you guys pull them up? Do you take them in the jocks room? And now, especially Richie and also Ramon, you guys are no longer riding, but will you take the time to go talk to a jock and try to maybe push them in another direction?
Well, I do that a lot. I'm still do it. So every time I see a kid who, has some talent and they want to do it, just learn and trying to teach them the right way. We touched about this and Richie talked about it, but, it's like the more you teach those kids, the safer it is for you to ride. You want to ride with a better, more knowledgeable than the kids who are very reckless, So it makes it a lot easier to ride with people like that. And those who are reckless, who don't want to learn, them those the one who make the liabilities. So, it makes it really, really hard to ride with and scary to ride with, because they don't want to listen, they don't want to learn, and they want to learn the hard way instead of learning the right way when we are telling them that you're doing it wrong. So it's hard. So some of them listen and some of them won't.
But I'm curious if any of you have had those conversations with young riders in the jocks room or what have you, not only about riding, but the lifestyle and mental health, and speaking with them about weight management or money management or just everything that goes along with the lifestyle of being a jockey, because it is so much more than just the riding aspect. I've
been lucky enough that I have a lot of people helping me along the way to get to where I am right now. So yes, I do that, and every time I see a kid who's doing well or not even doing well, just try to guide them even outside the jockeys room to do the things that they need to do, whether it's life insurance or disability insurance, anything to do with accountants or anything like that. They make sure that they go to the right people, you know, and because and those guys who are making money, that they get advantage of it right away, you know. So you try to guide them the right way, and hopefully that they follow up and do the things that they need to do. Again, there are some of them they listen, some of them they don't, because they have their own families and people who are on the ears, and they just go on and do their own things and whatever the families are, you know, that the families are telling them to do. And obviously, for the most part, they're very wrong.
We had a great program at the New York Racing Association when I was there full time after my riding career ended. I went to work for them in 2011. The apprentice jockey program, and we met every Sunday morning for a few hours. It was mandatory. They had to meet with me every Sunday morning. And obviously we went over race replays and looked at different things that they either did well or they did, made mistakes. But I felt it was important to make it more comprehensive. Had a friend of mine, Jessica Iglesias, a money manager, come in, talk to them about money, talk to them about saving money, talk to them about having a partner named Uncle Sam, that when they get a check for $20,000, it's not all their money, that they've got to put money aside and pay taxes. Had a nutritionalist come in, had people come down from the press department, how to communicate, how to talk. And even just for myself, I learned so much about how to educate young riders. And you don't call a kid out for a mistake in front of his peers. You talk about generalities, you talk about things they did well, and then say, I need to see you afterwards, and then pull up the film, because you don't want to make them defensive or make them embarrassed in front of their peers. They're young guys. A jockey has to have a certain amount of swagger. You don't want to, push somebody down to build them back up. And it was a really great program. When I left, the program was discontinued, which I would love to see, because jockeys are the only athlete in the world that we don't have a coach. A golfer has a swing coach. A baseball player has a hitting coach and a fielding coach. I mean, every athlete has a coach. Jockeys, not so much. It's more about guys like Johnny, Ramon, myself, taking on that responsibility. Now, obviously, I did it in a more formal role, but it was part of my job, and probably the most satisfying job or part of my job at NYRA at that time.
There's one thing that, while talking to their peers or maybe an experienced jockey, it is great when the apprentice, in this case, is open about their doubts. Listen, I am not sure about this or that, or sometime I don't know if I'm going to make it. And that is important. However, it doesn't happen often. There is this perhaps ego that if I open to certain concerns that I have or doubts, maybe I will be seen as lesser or is somebody weak. Now, it is great to acquire or to receive some great tools to be able to manage or navigate these waters when these doubts come. At the same time, by now I realize that there are certain things that you cannot teach somebody, that they just have to be developed by you doing the work over and over. And it's we can talk here because we're talking about jockeys and just being an athlete, just the physical aspect and how difficult it is, and whether it is the finesse or the style on top of a horse or the physical aspect. But that is big time secondary when it comes to having a successful long career, to the ability to have a strong mental health and to be just that mental strength is so important, and it's something that you achieve just by doing the work, but also realizing that sometimes your best asset can be your worst enemy, which is your own mind. And for that, we definitely need support. To be great to have people who will come and speak to these jockeys about, coaches, about different things that they are going through, and let them know that that's normal. And more importantly, then teach them and give them the tools as to how to be able to overcome these difficulties.
Let me just put a little bow on that, because Eddie Maple was a huge mentor for me in the jockeys room. And I was very mercurial. If I won 5, I was over the moon. If I got beat on 5 favorites, I was as depressed as could be. And one day he looked at me after the last race. I was down. I got beat on some horses. And he said, let me ask you a question. You lost on some favorites. Say, what are you going to do in the morning? So I'm going to get up early. I'm going to go to the track. He said, well, you won 4 last Sunday. What did you do the next day? So I got up early, went to the track. He said, so why don't you stay even? Why do you get so high and so low? And he just kind of boiled it down to me. Like, I'm basically going to conduct myself the same way, but I'm taking myself on this ride. I'm building myself up like I'm great, and then the bottom drops out like I'm terrible. And even with food, he said it to me, like I would obsess so much because I was starving so much that he would say, food's always going to be there. And that just kind of made sense. Now here I am, and I post pictures of food on social media.
I still want a meal made by Richie Migliore. One of these looks phenomenal. But I did, because I think mental health is so important. So I just was actually reading an article recently. Simone Biles is actually named Time Magazine's Athlete of the Year for what she did and coming out and exposing what she went through at the Olympics and mental health. And there's definitely been kind of, an undercurrent of the theme of mental health here. But if anybody has a specific story that might be helpful for someone who is watching this, and if you kind of went through a dark time and what those tools were. Ramon, I'm so happy that you kind of mentioned teaching people tools and letting them know the tools that you have used to work through problems. And I'm just curious if any of you have a story and what tools you might have used during that time.
I remember one day at Aqueduct, I won 4 races that day, and I won the stake. And in the last race, I made a big mistake. It was a $10,000 claimer. I think I was over anticipating winning my 5th race of the day. Is like a big number. It's kind of like a magic number to win 5 in a day. And made a move I shouldn't have made. I wound up getting beat in those, and the horse was the best horse. So in my mind, driving home, forget the 4 I won. That race exposed me. That I was exposed that I wasn't a good rider. That I had everybody fooled up until that point. That was the prevailing thought in my head. Went home, and my wife Carmela, it was a great day, and a terrible day, and I was upset because I got beat a nose on a horse that should not have lost. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep that night. 3:00 in the morning, she comes down to the den, and I'm watching race tapes. And she's like, what's going on with you? And I was like, I'm exposed. People saw I'm not a good rider. And she talked to me straight up, and you need help with this. And I went to a sports psychologist, and I was able to get out my fears. There was always an undercurrent for me that I was never good enough. I didn't come from a horse background. I came from the city. Everything I did, I was always a struggle. I felt like to get to where I wanted to be. And just to really be able to look at it honestly with yourself and go, wow, wait a second. You compete on the toughest circuit in the year, in the world, day in, day out, year after year, and you've established yourself. You don't continually have to prove, you're never going to be perfect, and you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that it's the end of the world and now you're no good. I had no middle ground. I was either on top of it, or I really felt like I wasn't good enough.
I have to say that I went through the same things. I mean, I think we all go through that. But, the only thing of mine is that I'm very spoken. I'd be in the Jockeys room telling how stupid I am or how dumb I was, and talk about it. And then that's what the guys tell him. Oh, Johnny's always crying. Winning all the races, always crying. And I think that was my way of still is my way of coping, my way to come out and get out of my system. So I. Just like you, Richie, I will go home and I'll beat myself out of it. I mean, at the beginning, I remember talking to you, Richie, one night, and it was very early in my career, and could be 92, 93, whatever what year it was. And I went to you, it's like, how do you do it, man? How do you do it when, you're on top and you don't really win? When you do it, like, he says, boy, you just got to keep at it. Just keep running on it. I don't know if you remember that. It's like, we just got to keep at it. That's it. There's going to be bad days. They're going to be good days. So you got to take the good with the bad with the good, and you got to move up. So that was one of my learning lessons that, okay, it happens to everybody, so you got to keep going. I mean, 93 was one of the really good years. And all of a sudden going to Acro, I went to a slow time that I wasn't even winning. I think I went for a month. I think it was a month that I was not winning. And that's when I went to you. I was like, how do you guys do it, man? How do you put up with all this stuff, So, we all go through it. I mean, we all do it, but I'm a guy who talks about it, and I'm very open to it. I don't hide anything.
When I was an apprentice in my native land, Venezuela, and I was working real hard to finally get an opportunity to ride a good horse, because I think that I had won just one race. So my agent found me a super good mount, a horse that really was even money, he should win. And I was so excited to ride this horse. And it was a trainer that was extremely successful. I come to the paddock and this horse just stood out. He looked absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. And the trainer gave me the instructions, and I went out there and I just messed it up completely. I opened up at the half a mile, just moved too early, opened up like 10, 12 lanes, and I just got via the wire. And I remember my family going to see me ride, because they live a few hours away from the racetrack, and they went to see me ride. And when the race was over, I mean, the whole grandstand was booing me, and I come to the judge's room, get changed, and go to the car. And as soon as I got into the car, when my family, my siblings were there, I'm just crying and bawling. But I remember thinking the whole ride home, because they took me to the apartment where I was staying, thinking, my gosh, if I was able just to turn back time and really ride this horse differently, that would be so awesome. Of course, I don't know, a fantasy that I had in my mind. That would be so great if I could just erase that mistake. As it turned out, the next day, exactly what Eric Maple asked Migliore, that's what I chose to do. Believe me, I just wanted to stay in and sleep. I was depressed, but I got up early and I went to the track, and I went to see the trainer that I rode for the day before, and he actually put me on other horses to exercise. And after a few months, he gave me an opportunity to ride 2 other good horses, and I won on both horses. But the point is that by me making that mistake, that absolutely taught me the best lesson that I could have learned in my career, which was to be patient. And that absolutely led to a lot of my accomplishments, because I was okay for me to take a hold of a horse and just relax. So what I thought in the moment that was just the worst thing that could have happened to me, it happens to be the greatest blessing in disguise.
I think trainers make a big mistake, replacing guys if they make a mistake. If they show the guy confidence, they'll ride better for them, because they're not tied up and not.
Absolutely.
And then young riders, like I know, and this is important for young riders to hear. When I wasn't doing good, like especially after having some success, I would go home and feel like I couldn't reach out to my friends or my family, because I felt like I was letting them down when I wasn't winning. And they were tiptoeing around me because they felt bad that I was maybe in a slump. When that's when you do have to reach out to them, and people should reach out to you, but it becomes this odd, catch-22. Everybody's trying to tiptoe around each other. And it would just go to such a lonely place. So if you're a young rider and you get in a slump, people want to hear from you, and you want to hear from them. They're just probably in the same mindset as you, like they don't want to bother you, but that's when you need them.
Well, to that point, I think we have a perfect group here to add for our final question. If you're going to advise young riders or jockeys that are coming up behind you in terms of how they should maybe look at or plan for, because as you said, Richie, at the end's going to come. There is going to be a last race. You are not going to, at some point, you're not going to ride anymore. How would you advise young riders or people coming up behind you based on your personal experiences?
Yeah, for me, though, I've been one of the lucky ones. I would say that, and one of the blessed ones that are still here riding on my own terms. I do tell them from the get-go, the people that I talk to, so obviously work hard, learn from everybody, not just from the best, because sometimes if you don't see the people who are making mistakes, you don't want to make those mistakes. Then go on to your life, basically, but make sure you open a bank account, make sure you put your money, your savings account, your retirement account, all those things needs to be in place, that you maximize every year your retirement account. Those are things that you have to do for living. You don't know when this is going to end. It's a job that you could be doing really good right now, and just like Richie and Ramon, had to stop from riding, and you hope that they had enough or save enough that they can support themselves. So those things that I try to, listen, it's not just a job that you do, but it's also what you do with your job and your life outside the Jockeys room.
Yeah, I think impressing upon them, obviously being responsible, with your money and doing the right things in that respect, but kind of instilling the idea that, this is one part of your life, and it's, there's a lot more life after you're done riding. I rode for 29 years. I'm 56 now. So you have a lot of other life to live, and everything's about balance. I know I spent a great majority of my career out of balance. My career was so much my focus. Got better when I had children, because you have to obviously be a father and try to do all the right things. But, when I was riding, I was looking at life through a keyhole a lot. And it was when it was over, the things that, hobbies and things like, I don't golf or things like that, but I like to hike. I like the mountains. I like to read. I'm constantly trying to improve intellectually. I only finished the 8th grade. They pay me to talk. So I'm always a little bit insecure that I've got to work on my vocabulary and how I present things. So I think it's about finding a balance. Understanding what you're doing right now is so important, and it could set you up for the rest of your life, but also that you have to be well-rounded, and you have to find other things that, inspire you, that make you passionate.
My biggest advice is not about what people can see, is what is happening when people cannot see you. What are you doing behind doors? What are you spending your time into? So those are things extremely important. What are you eating? Things that you may think that you're fooling other people by doing things that that are not the good thing to do or the right thing to do, but you're only fooling yourself. So everything become a habit. Just become good at creating healthy habits, because if a jockey wants to pursue a career, to make a few bucks or to make X amount of money to buy something, wonderful, good luck to you. But if you want to make out of this a great career, to be a Richie Migliore, to be a Johnny Velazquez, to break records, to win a lot of races, or to win a Kentucky Derby, in order to do that, you need to also watch what people don't see.
And Ramon, you practice what you preach. Do you guys have anything else you want to say? I think we're kind of getting to the close here.
It's been a lot of fun. Love talking about all this stuff. We're all very blessed to be in an industry that we're in. And we need to do a better job of educating people and demystifying what we do. And, you're always going to have a faction of people that are going to be negative, and they're going to try to tear something down. But the people that just don't know and are open to actually learning something, it's incumbent upon us. It's our responsibility to take that serious and educate and open the door. Let them see actually what a beautiful game it is.
Thank you, Gabby and Christina and TDN, for having us. This has been great.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. And next episode, part 2, will be with your wives.
Yes.
Well, Christina, obviously mental health has been a major topic, especially recently with athletes. And I thought this podcast was incredibly insightful, just to hear from all 3 of them, their experiences and what they've been through.
These are people that we're so used to seeing on a day-to-day basis. In many cases, we see them on TV, we will see them at the racetracks, and it's really inspiring to hear them talk so personally about their experiences and some really intense things that have happened to them. They've gone through injuries, they've gone through very traumatic experiences, they've had the highs, they've had the lows. But Gabby, I really think that I'm so grateful that they were able to not only come on, but to just be so forthright. And I'm just so appreciative of having these talks with people in our industry.
There's one thing that really stood out to me, Johnny Velazquez. We were talking about 2013, the Breeders' Cup, when he had that spill and almost died. And he's like, yeah, I almost died, but I'm the lucky one. And just the mindset of these guys too, how how they work through bad days, how they work through injuries, how they work through coming back, and just, public perception and, the perception of peers in the industry too. I really hope that athletes or just general people in the industry who might have struggled through something similarly have maybe a couple more tools in their toolkit now.
Well, I think these guys are they're Iron Men, they're warriors. And I think we sometimes don't give them the credit. They're under a lot of pressure, under a lot of stress, and they really have to come up with their own individual, unique ways to deal with that stress. So again, I'm just so not only appreciative of them, I admire them. And to get to where they have gotten to in also in this profession, it's hard. So I really think they're great role models, Gabby, for the rest of the industry.
Yeah, and like Richie Migliore said, this is a career that it's so unique in that you don't have a coach. You pretty much have to coach yourself and lean on peers and mentors to get you through it. So yeah, I had so much fun with this podcast.
Well, and we haven't actually been on this podcast for a little while, Gabby. And as I was saying a little bit earlier, you've been busy in the interim since our last podcast.
I have been busy. My son, Crew, was actually born on the 12th of November. So that's kind of the reason behind a little bit of a hiatus. It is chaotic in the Cassie household, but hopefully we can get back on more of a schedule. He has been the best baby. I'm telling you, I am so lucky. He gives us 4-hour stretches at night. And so that's why I look very well rested, because he was a total rock star last night.
Well, folks, this is going to be a name that you're going to have to remember. Of course, Gabby, a lifelong horsewoman, Norm Cassie, a lifelong horseman. Of course, Crew, we know he's going to at some point be involved in some capacity with horses, but we're so looking forward. I've seen pictures of him. I'm so looking forward to seeing him in the flesh.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, Norman said there's already been a compilation of Breeders' Cup Classics that has been shown to him many times on YouTube. So that's what's going on.
Well, so God bless, and thank God for a happy, healthy baby that sleeps for stretches and periods of time. And we'll be seeing him soon, and we'll be seeing all of you soon too.